My name is Galvez Lara. This is my racial autobiography. I'm not really sure necessarily how to summarize how race and my culture has formed the person that I am today because of how much there is to explain, how much there is that contributes to my identity currently because of my understanding of race and my culture. I was born in Lenox, California, which is a primarily Latino community. And I think growing up and until I left off for college, I had a pretty distinct disliking for my culture, for my race. Part of it was informed by what I was seeing on TV, primarily what I was seeing on the media, because nothing that was necessarily being shown on TV demonstrated what my lived experience was. My family was mixed status family. I was born here, but the majority of my family migrated to the United States from Mexico. And while I grew up speaking Spanish and English, it was very clear that I needed to do well in school and I needed to work hard to make my family proud. And I don't think that there was necessarily a drive to go to college or get a high school diploma, or that those things were necessarily milestones, but it was more about this image of working hard and being clean and pretty much debunking stereotypes that existed about Latinos and Mexicans in particular in Los Angeles. I think that while it was not overt, was very clear that we couldn't be seen as poor, even though we were, and we struggled for food and we struggled with money. We couldn't be seen as dirty or lazy, and we couldn't necessarily hold on to our language. I know that while, again, it wasn't overt, it was very clear that because I spoke English well, it was a source of pride for my grandmother and my family. And my grandmother raised me, which was very, I think, helpful in forming my racial and cultural identity, because while I watched her and as I've grown to ask her more questions about how she raised me in Los Angeles, it became very clear that while she never learned English, it was crucial for her to be able to navigate in the world in Los Angeles without being noticed, without being standing out as different. And I think I really internalized those messages, and I worked hard to be an A+ student. I worked hard to always do better and be better. And while the people around me necessarily were very similar to me, I definitely felt like I deserved more. I wanted different. I didn't want to be in my community because it was limiting. I didn't see the opportunities that were being shown on TV and in the media, and those weren't available to me. So I felt that there was something wrong with me, and I really wanted more. And that led me to leave California. And it wasn't until then that I really grew to love and appreciate my culture, my race, the people in my community, the people in Los Angeles, and really understand the beauty of the struggle that we've gone to get to these points. I think that by learning about history of Los Angeles through my college experience, by getting away and being in a community that did not reflect diversity, that did not reflect my cultural values, that made it very clear that financial stability and being white and upper middle class and having those opportunities really did give you a step up in our society. And I grew to appreciate all the resilience that my family displayed in giving me the opportunity to even go away to college. I think beyond that, being in college, it became very clear that because of my gender and my race, or in my culture and my community, women do not travel away from home if they're not married, or Latina women or Mexican women. It was very disconcerting for my family for me to be the only woman leaving not only home without marriage, but leaving the state and going off to college and being on my own. I received a lot of negative messages and feedback, but I think it became clear that this was that kind of middle ground, or as it's heard of as Nepantla, the middle area, was where I existed the majority of my time. I was Latina, I was Chicana, I was both Mexican, but I was American as well. And going off to college, it made it very clear that because of those complex dynamics, I was challenging my family to step outside their comfort zone. I think then coming back to Los Angeles, it was very clear once I started to remember and recall on some of my experiences as a child that, you know, my identity and my understanding as not just being Mexican, but being bilingual, being a graduate from college, and then also experiencing privilege because of my skin tone, you know, instances like crossing the border with my family became much more clear how race impacted how I interacted with the world. I know that every time that my family would cross the border, my uncle would be questioned. My uncle is of darker skin, has a green card, is a working man, owns his own business, and I couldn't understand why we would be continuously questioned and treated like a criminal when we were crossing the border and trying to bring food and supplies to our family. And I realized at about the age of 14 that if I would step out and if the officers saw me, maybe because of my skin color, they would relax and let us cross the border and get to our family and do what we needed to do. I think that experience of crossing the border and having family on both sides in Los Angeles and in Mexico also made it very clear that I needed to recognize my privilege because I had many. I could speak both languages. I could pass as a white person, but I could also defend the people of color because I was seen as someone who maybe had more privilege or was deemed someone who needed to be respected just because of the color of my skin. And our society is challenging in that way. I think the person who I am today has been greatly impacted by race and culture because I understand that my privileges allow me to be better and to provide more for the people that I love and care about and the people in my community.